of Yarra, welcome to this virtual council meeting. We are convening primarily to deal with the item of the planning application for the Piedemontes proposal, but we also have two urgent business items which we'll deal with at the end of the night. I'd like to commence by recognising that here in Yarra we're meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people, and to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge all of the very significant contributions that people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds have made to life here in Yarra. I'll start by just doing a bit of a roll call. In attendance, myself, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Chenley May, Councillor Denai Bosler, I think we've got you not yet back. Councillor Jackie Fristacchi, Councillor Stephen Jolly.
Present, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor Bosler. Councillor Jolly, Councillor Nguyen, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Searle and Councillor Amanda Stone. We also have in attendance with us council officers. So I would just like to start by asking...
Mayor, sorry, I don't believe Councillor Nguyen is with us at the moment.
Okay, all right, I'm just trying to see all the councillors up on the screen, which our able-bodied IT assistant is working on. In terms of any declarations of conflict of interest from either staff, councillors, are there any declarations of conflict that we need to hear about? No, thank you. All right, well, we're going to proceed straight away to the planning application, which is the substantive item of business tonight, 27 to 45 Best Street. And I'll ask our Coordinator of Planning, Ms Mary Osman, to give us a report, please. Ms Osman.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides Council with an assessment of planning permit application PLN 618 on land known as the Piedemontes site, and also affects two council-owned right-of-ways being right-of-way 2087 and 2088. The application seeks approval for partial demolition of the existing buildings on site and for the use and development of the land for the construction of a Part 5, Part 7-storey building. This also includes a supermarket, bottle shop, food and drinks premises and dwellings, sale of packaged liquor, and a reduction in the car parking requirements. The subject site's included within the Commercial 1 zone and is covered by the Heritage Overlay. As outlined in the report, the application has been advertised twice, with the most recent version advertised in June 2019, where 602 objections were received in total. Subsequent to the finalisation of the report, additional objections have been received, bringing the new total to over 700. The grounds of objection are summarised at paragraph 19 of the report, and I won't repeat them in this presentation. However, it is important to note that matters regarding the discontinuance and acquisition of the laneway are not considered by this report and are subject to the provisions of the Local Government Act 1989 and will form a separate process. The application was referred to Transport Victoria as the relevant referral authority and to a number of internal and external consultant specialists in the fields of urban design, heritage, engineering, waste, strategic, environmentally sensitive design, wind impacts and acoustics. The report has undertaken a detailed assessment of the application and makes recommendations to include a number of conditions, including the deletion of a level, reducing the overall height to a maximum of 6 storeys, additional setbacks, a condition that states that the permit does not come into effect until all areas of the public laneways are formally discontinued under the provisions of the Local Government Act, and requirements for some site remediation. Councillors, I might leave the report there and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms Osman. And just before we proceed with questions, I want to just point out for those people who are watching online that, many of you have been in direct contact with councillors and officers throughout the process. As you heard from Ms Osman, we had originally 602 people who lodged objections, and all of these have been made available to all councillors, and we've had them at our disposal at our disposal for more than 6 weeks now. So in addition to those original 602 objections, over the last 2 weeks, we've had submissions from 283 people, and we have had those circulated in full to all councillors in advance of tonight. I had undertaken to originally read all of those submissions, but I think you'll understand that that's not going to be an efficacious way to proceed. And I had also undertaken to read out the names and postcodes of all of those, but instead of that, I'm just going to let you know by suburb where the submissions have come from. So 3 from Brunswick, 1 from Carlton North, 3 from Clifton Hill, 1 from Brunswick East, 1 from Fairfield, 7 from Fitzroy, 226 from Fitzroy North, 1 from Lower Plenty, 1 from Mornington, 1 from Mount Waverley, 1 from North Melbourne, 2 from Northcote, 4 from Pascoe Vale, 2 from Thornbury, 1 from Toorak, 6 from Yarraville, 16 from the ACT and 6 from New South Wales. So I'm going to move now to questions from councillors. Councillor O'Brien. Go ahead, Councillor O'Brien. You'll need to unmute yourself. Now, we can hear you now.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, so I guess I have a few questions. I'm happy to, I don't have to, anyway. So my first question, I guess, is has the matter of, there was at least one application error, and that was where the building at the rear of the property at 36 Egremont Street was incorrectly identified as a brick garage rather than a studio bedroom, and I'm wondering if that issue has been addressed.
Ms. Osman? Ms. Osman, are you in a position to answer that question?
She's muted, Mayor.
Okay, I just see if I can unmute her. Ms. Osman.
Through the chair. Sorry.
Yes.
Yep.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Just had a little bit of technical difficulty. We have reviewed the endorsed plans for the site at 36 Egremont Street and can confirm that the endorsed plans do not show that room being used or approved as a bedroom, but rather as a hobby space. And while I appreciate that some information has come to light that the use for this is not in accordance with the endorsed plans, it doesn't really have an effect on the recommendation that the officers have drafted.
Thanks, Ms. Osman. Next question, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. My second question is, it wasn't very clear in the report, but could we please have further information about why the McGorran advice for substantial changes to built form and articulation were not accepted in the officer recommendation, and I guess specifically with regard to the number of levels or the height and the appropriateness of the design and streetscape impact, and I guess what were the grounds for the McGorran report being rejected, I suppose. Thank you.
Ms. Osman.
Through you, Chair. Officers did take into consideration the advice that was received from Mr. Rob McGorran. However, we need to balance this. There's a number of competing policies within the Yarra planning scheme, and on balance, we have accepted some of the recommendations, and other recommendations we believed went too far, and that is why we have made a balanced assessment of the application within the report, and we believe that on balance, subject to those conditions that we've outlined, that the application should be supported.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. My next question was just with regard, there was something in that, just referring back to the McGorran report, I guess, and regarding overshadowing of public and private areas, there was something that specifically paragraph 38 of that report, and could you please speak to the issue of, just to paraphrase him, the applicant seeks to enjoy substantial benefit while effectively denying immediate southern residents or neighbours something or other. So I can't remember his exact words, but I guess it related to an expectation of access to green energy to the southern neighbours.
Thanks, Ms Osman.
Through you, Chair, officers reviewed the shadow diagrams that were prepared with the application, and we have found that impacts to private properties for overshadowing is limited to 9 a.m. So while we recognise that a concern was raised in the urban design advice, from a planning perspective, the impact being limited to an hour in the morning was considered to be an acceptable outcome.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor O'Brien?
Sorry, just to follow up on that one quickly. So was that an independent overshadowing sort of review, and was that and did that include shadow diagrams and things like that? So was that an independently assessed?
Thanks, Councillor O'Brien. Yep, I think we understand the question. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Ms Osman?
Through you, Chair, so the shadow diagrams were prepared by the permit applicant and those have been reviewed by officers. So yes, they have been reviewed.
Okay, thank you. And just quickly, my last final question, I'm sure everyone else has other questions. Just with regard to heritage, one of the heritage reports noted that the emission from the heritage register of 2 buildings, specifically 27 and 29 Best Street, needed to be investigated for heritage value. Did that occur, and were they found to be significant, contributory, or are they still just ungraded?
Through you, Chair, I might just jump in and respond to that. Council officers were aware that there were 2 properties that were not graded within the heritage study, and we have raised that with our strategic department to review that. Irrespective, these buildings are proposed to be retained as part of the development, and Council's heritage advisor has reviewed the scheme and raised no concern with that aspect.
Thanks, Ms Osman. Thanks, Councillor O'Brien. Other questions, councillors? Councillor Fistacchi?
Yeah, just going back over the overshadowing and the response from Ms Osman, with the officer recommendation of reduction of a level, what impact does that have on the overshadowing at 9 a.m?
Ms Osman?
Through you, Chair, the recommendation is for the building to be reduced by a story to Best Street. So in reality, there may be a reduction in overshadowing, but to be honest, probably not from the proposed changes that we are seeking. In any event, the permit applicant would need to submit new shadow diagrams to reflect any new built form outcome that is approved this evening.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Fistacchi?
Sorry, just in relation to, I've got a few, but in relation to, again, the overshadowing, the McGorran reports at paragraph 38 specifically referred to the impact on the neighbours' roof panels, solar panels. Was the overshadowing assessed in relation to the roof panels as much as the roof itself, or as elements of the roof?
Ms Osman?
Through you,
or was
Chair,
it secluded private open space?
my understanding is that the open space was the primary concern raised within the officer's report, and ensuring that it was limited to 1 hour. If overshadowing impacts the open space for an hour, the roof panels would be unobstructed, would be my response.
Has that been assessed though independently, well, separately from the secluded private open space?
I'll need to get back to you. We'll just have a look through the plans now.
Yeah, all right. And thank you. Next question, again, follows on from Councillor O'Brien's question about heritage. And I go to its clause, or really paragraph 111 of the agenda, at page 32, which refers to the development guidelines for sites subject to the heritage overlay. Now, the heritage overlay is the North Fitzroy Heritage Precinct. So can I confirm that the whole of the development is in the heritage overlay?
Ms. Osman?
That is correct.
That's correct. And then clause or paragraph 111 outlines the design guidelines for new development and says the design of new development and alterations, additions to a heritage place or a contributory element to a heritage place set out a range of criteria. So in terms of the definition of a heritage place, and I know there's been some issues about and discussion about that in relation to the planning scheme revision, is the whole of the development regarded as being part of the heritage place?
Through you, Chair, contextually, absolutely, in recognition that some of the buildings on site are not contributory buildings and therefore different aspects of the policy would apply to different aspects of the site.
Yeah. But being a heritage, being all of it seen to be a heritage place, do all of characteristics 1 to 7 of the heritage policies in clause 2202 regarding the design guidelines apply?
The provisions for infill development would apply to the buildings that have no graded buildings, and obviously where there are contributory buildings, there'd be another set of controls which would apply to those. But in a broader sense, the heritage policy applies to the site.
Yeah. So just going through those provisions, and I'll come back to the officer's assessment, respecting the heritage character of the surrounding historic streetscape, being articulated and massed to correspond with the prevailing building form of the heritage place or contributing elements, being visually recessive and not dominating the heritage place, and various other things. That's set out in the criteria to be applied. But when you go to the officer assessment under demolition in heritage at paragraphs 160 to 163, there's no discussion of applying those criteria regarding being visually recessive and not dominating and being part of the and not and respecting the heritage character of the surrounding historic streetscape and corresponding with the prevailing building form of the heritage place or contributory elements. So I'm trying to understand why those key elements, which I think would have been critical to discuss in this report, weren't discussed.
Thank you. Ms. Osman?
Through you, Chair, I have to say that I strongly disagree with that proposition. The report covers many topics and doesn't slavishly talk about every single dot point in the planning policies. You would appreciate the report then would be 300 pages long. So council officers obtained expert advice from council's heritage advisor who raised no real concerns with the application. We've undertaken our own assessment and we've talked about urban design along with topics of urban design to ensure that we've come up or what we believe is an appropriate design response for the site. We don't agree that what's been put forward before council is entirely appropriate and subject to conditions regarding setbacks and a reduction in height. We believe that that would present a built form outcome which would meet both the heritage policy and urban design principles.
So the provisions regarding being articulated and massed, since height and mass is a critical element of this development.
What time's the
So, Councillor Jolly, would you just like to mute yourself? Right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So the condition about or the relevant policy regarding being articulated and massed to correspond with the prevailing built form, you're saying you don't agree that wasn't that should have been discussed, but how can it be said that it corresponds with the prevailing built form?
The building, Through you, Chair, the building is appropriately massed subject to some height reductions and increased setbacks. The building is segmented into proportions that are more generally compliant with Victorian proportions, albeit it is taller. We're not for one moment are we saying in this report that it mimics or reflects exactly the existing built form that exists along Scotchmer Street. What we are acknowledging is that this is a redevelopment site and that has been sensitively designed and reflects a number of the elements that are found within the surrounding streetscapes. What we have, however, said is that some further changes are required to be made to ensure that the building sits comfortably within the streetscape, and that's the position we've put forward, and that's how we've assessed the application.
So then the other element is sight lines applied, particularly to those contributory buildings on Scotchmer and also on Best Street. I don't see any discussion of the sight lines in the report either, so I'm just wondering why that was.
Ms. Osman?
Through you, Chair, a specific commentary around sightlines wasn't provided because there was no concerns raised by councillors' expert heritage advisor that sightlines were an issue with the development. The upper levels, as they present to Scotchmer Street, are set back. The retention of those two-storey heritage built forms will ensure that the presentation along Scotchmer Street as a pedestrian when you experience it remains the same at a two-storey height. And while I appreciate that from oblique views you will be able to see the upper levels, Council's policy doesn't say that the upper levels have to be invisible. They need to be appropriately treated, and we believe that they have been in this instance.
Thank you. And I'd just like to acknowledge, I think we've got Councillor Dan Nguyen's just joined us. Are you there, Councillor Nguyen? We're just waiting for his video to come. Just waiting for his video to come on stream. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Nguyen, can I just check to see whether you have any declarations of conflict of interest before we proceed?
No comments tonight, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. If you mind just muting yourself, Councillor Nguyen, that would be great. Councillor Fristacchi, did you have any further questions?
Yeah, just one further one in terms of the heritage assessment and the heritage character. Councillor O'Brien referred to the McGorran.
Just 1 second. We've got a fair bit of noise coming in from the background. It's either Councillor Jolly or Councillor Nguyen. If you wouldn't mind just muting yourselves. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Councillor Fristacchi.
Just following up the heritage character issues or neighbourhood character, we and the McGorran report that Councillor O'Brien referred to. You as Mayor referred to the number of submissions, and a large number of them are actually rely on the McGorran report and refer to it, particularly in terms of the paragraph 39, which deals with response to heritage context, and that says that the footprint and scale remains incongruous in a small compact village context surrounded by consistently fine-grained lower scale residential streets and built form, and in a location where recent changes have been of considerably more modest scale and must be reduced in height. And then there's the reference to the height reduction to seeking one building at 5 and one at 4. The officer does refer to that in terms of height at paragraph 165, but it doesn't seem to give reasons why the McGorran report wouldn't be accepted on that, other than to say that the building doesn't adequately respond to the surrounding context of buildings at 1 and 2 stories, and if it's reduced to 6, that's a good compromise. That achieves a compromise that's acceptable. And I'm just asking about the reasons that McGorran put in his report don't seem to be actually discussed and debated, other than said, well, it's a compromise. So I'm just wondering why that was the case.
Ms. Osman?
Through you, Chair. I think I need to qualify a few things. The Planning Officer's report doesn't go through a slavish comparison of each paragraph between what every referral comment has made. It is a collective response to how the street walls, new built form, all responded to the surrounding context. I acknowledge that the Rob McGorran report requested a deletion of 2 levels from the building. Council's heritage advisor was satisfied with the 7 stories. Council officers felt that to have an acceptable outcome for the site, which is what the planning scheme requires, an acceptable outcome, not an ideal outcome, that the built form should reduce by a single level, and that's what we have recommended.
Thanks so much. Councillor Fristacchi, sorry, I'm just going to, we've just got a number of other questions from other councillors. Would you mind if we just went to them and maybe came back to that outstanding one of yours?
Yep. I think I've covered, but I'll just have another look. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, through you, Chair. There was one question that I did say that I would come back to, and that was the impact of the solar panels. We had specific shadow diagrams. We requested the applicant prepare specific shadow diagrams to outline what, if any, impact there was on the solar panels, and they are actually attached in attachment 27, and I'm sorry, there are numerous attachments to this report. It's titled Without Prejudice Shadows Relating to Photovoltaics Solar Panels, and those show that the solar panels will not be affected.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to a question from Councillor Bosler.
Thank you, Mayor. Much appreciated. And I hope, I don't mean to interrupt ward councillors. They can definitely take precedent in asking their questions. Through you, Mayor, to Ms Osmond, and correct me if I missed anything in the report. I had 2 questions for you, Ms Osmond. Number one, it was originally advertised in 2017 and went to a public exhibition, public meeting. It also was re-advertised in 2019, and I couldn't see in the report that there was a public meeting, a public information session with residents in 2019. Can you correct that? And then the second question, if you're happy to take 2 of them at once. The second one is a broader question, and I kind of seek your professional and your expert advice on this in the context of the whole street, just beyond the immediate vicinity as well. And this is a large site, and I acknowledge and recognise that it's a large site. So looking up and down St George's Road, both ends up towards the creek and down further towards the major intersections. Are there other sites that are of equal depth, I guess? Is there another site in the area that might have the capacity to take this much development? And I can think of the one on the river which has, but I'm just wondering what's the comparisons to other sites along that strip? Is there, would this be setting a precedent, or is there capacity for other sites along the street to take more development as well?
Thanks, Councillor Bosler.
Through you, Chair, I'll take the first question first. There wasn't an info session or consultation meetings for this application. With 600 odd objections, it wouldn't have been a manageable consultation meeting, so one was not held. With respect to the second question about are there any other sites within the surrounding area that could accommodate a development of this scale, off the top of my head, I couldn't answer that question to say yes or no. I know that there are other larger sites. I don't think there are many within this precinct that would be of this scale.
Thank you, Ms Osmond. Move on to Councillor Searle.
Can I just do a follow-up question on that? Can I ask Ms Osmond then? Would you consider that this would set a precedent for the area if you think that there are not other sites that could take this level of development? The argument about whether it sets a precedent is one that's often raised, but if we do not think there are other sites with this kind of this scale to take, big enough to take this kind of development, do you think it would not be setting a precedent? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, no, because every application needs to be assessed on its merits. With respect to precedents, I don't know if a group of people have land banked land, bought up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shop fronts. So it's very difficult to provide a definitive answer to that, other than to say somebody did and there was a site of equivalent scale. We would assess that application on its merits as we have this one.
Thank you. Councillor Bosler, are you wanting to ask anything further?
No, thank you, Ms Osmond. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Searle.
Thank you. The application involves a number of terraces on Scotchmere Street, which currently have commercial uses and shops, becoming townhouses behind those facades. And I wondered if officers have any views or concerns on the transition of commercial use to residential use and whether or not that's a desirable thing given the commercial one zoning.
Ms Osman?
Through you, Chair, this is a topic that comes up a number of times, especially where you have land on corners. In this instance, a number of the Victorian terraces that are sought to be retained are proposing to have home occupations within them, so therefore that a business could establish on the ground floor and continue to present a commercial interface to Scotchmere Street, but also then allow the prospective purchaser to have their apartment or their dwelling upstairs. So we feel that that is a reasonable response to ensuring that there is a commercial link to Scotchmere Street, as there has been with those terraces, but also allowing additional residences to live on the site, I suppose.
Did you have a
follow-up question?
Yes.
Just to clarify, and I can't find the exact plan in front of me, I apologise, but I understood that those Scotchmere fronting terraces were in the plans as townhouses rather than something more flexible. Is that right, or is it more of a space that could be either?
Through you, Chair, they are labelled townhouses, but there's also annotations on the ground floor, and excuse me while I flick plans, which state that they are to be used commercially to the front to enable either a home office or some sort of commercial use, and that relates to townhouses 1 to townhouse 4, and then as the building turns onto Egremont Street, the townhouses become purely residential.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next question from Councillor Stone.
Thank you. It's just following that line of inquiry. Ms Osman, are you suggesting that a commercial use will be required in those 4 townhouses to Scotchmere Street, or is it notional? And what would be stopping them becoming residential on the ground floor as some of our shop fronts are in Yarra?
Go ahead, Ms Osman.
Through you, Chair, they are notional. Obviously, the sites those townhouses haven't been sold. There's no permit to sell, so that we know who exactly will move into those buildings. As shown on these plans, and if approved, that's how they will be endorsed. They will show that there'll be home occupations at the ground floor. Should they wish to vary from that, they would need to come in and amend.
So for them to be commercial use, they would have to have an amendment. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
The converse. So if they wanted to be purely residential, through you, Chair, that they would need to come back and amend the plans as what is shown on the plans are in effect home occupations.
Is that clear, Councillor Stone?
Yes, it is. It's actually the gist of this is something the community has raised multiple times, which is those smaller shop fronts to Scotchmere Street are highly valued, and it sounds as though there's going to be no way of ensuring that they remain commercial, interactive frontages, and I think that's what I'm hearing from Ms Osman. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now, I don't see any other questions from any other councillors. Sorry, Councillor Stacky, do you have a final question?
Yes, I did want to raise that issue as well. Would it assist if we were able to have a condition that would attach to those townhouses, which would require some active street frontage occupants, commercial use or home office use? Is that feasible or not?
Ms Osman?
Through you, Chair, the plans show that it is to be used for that purpose. So I'm not sure how a condition can require someone to do something that is already shown on the plans, and council can't prohibit a new use from establishing on the site, like a dwelling on the ground floor, because it's a permit required use and permissible, but they will need to come back for further approval if that's what they want to do. So I would caution against requiring conditions on a permit.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask further, if someone came back to change that, what would be it would be done under delegation. So what's the approach when that happens?
It's also
Through you, Chair, we look at things like street activation, and we don't like to have buildings to have completely blocked out windows presenting to streets. So it's not saying that one could never, ever establish in this area, but careful consideration would be made if an amendment sought that change.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms Osman. Now, I don't see any further questions from councillors. No, gone, no further questions from councillors. So thank you very much, councillors, and thanks, Ms Osman, for providing those responses. Now, we have 2 alternate recommendations that have been requested by the councillors. I'm going to take the first one, going to consider the first one that was requested by Councillor O'Brien. If we could get that up on the screen for everybody watching and for all councillors, please. And while we're looking at that, these have been circulated to councillors in advance of tonight. I'll first check to see whether there's a seconder for this alternate recommendation before going through it. Is there a seconder for this alternate recommendation?
Mayor, I'm prepared to second it.
Councillor Fitzpatrick is seconding it. So we have it up on the screen. This is an alternate recommendation and its grounds for refusal of the application. Just making sure it's fully up on the screen, and it's not carried unanimously, Ms Niku, because it hasn't been put yet. So
it's on the screen. It's on the screen.
I know it's on the screen, and it's also got the result of the vote, which is not appropriate given that we haven't voted yet. So it's up on the screen there in full. I'll ask everybody to read through it to make sure it's in accordance with what they understood was being proposed, and it's up there for any members of the public, the applicants and any submitters. Councillor O'Brien, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, please. Thank you. I guess this has been a very difficult decision and one that has had a lot of consideration. I guess, firstly, I would like to acknowledge the significant contribution of the Piedemonte family and to our community over many decades. I think it's important to point out that this is this supermarket's been well loved for providing access, particularly to continental foods and things like that, products that have only relatively recently been available in other supermarkets. I think it's important to note that for many families, it's provided an important connection to our Italian heritage, mine included. And more broadly, I just want to point out that the importance of this supermarket to the multicultural fabric of our local community, I guess to cultural diversity, and even more broadly, say, to a more tolerant society than existed in 1958 when it was established, is actually an important thing to acknowledge. So I just want to say, though, in putting this refusal motion forward, I have grappled with this very long and hard, but weighing everything up, I'm unable to support the application or the officer recommendations. From my perspective, it is completely out of keeping with the small-scale local village atmosphere. And this is a village that includes Yarra's fantastic newest library, which is a significant community asset, and it provides a very solid foundation for this particular area as an important community hub. And I think what's important to a village or a community hub is the diversity of retail and small business, so diversity of businesses and retail opportunities. So in my mind, central to the charm of a small shopping strip are things like heritage values, quirky little speciality shops, things like that, but mostly and significantly diversity of retail. And I think one large-scale sort of hegemonic development erases that forever. Things like heritage qualities can never be replaced, and once they're gone forever. So I think this development is arguably a central feature of that small compact village. And remember that special diagonal road is a very significant and one of the last remaining sort of heritage strips like that anywhere in Melbourne. It also, that area contains the Pinnacle, which was the original post office, which is of significant heritage value. The surrounding area is fine grain low-rise neighbourhood, residential neighbourhood with significant, within a heritage overlay. I guess I find the height of the proposal completely out of context with the surrounding streets. The other thing I really want to emphasise is I think the library is a moderate and sensitive design, which is an asset for the whole community, and that demands surroundings that draw the community to it. Not that we can't centralise it for just a few or reduce it to a thoroughfare. I don't believe that this proposal is conducive to promoting a community gathering place. Other issues are heritage values.
Just to let you know that your 5 minutes is up. If you wouldn't mind drawing your remarks to a close, that'd be appreciated.
Okay, so heritage, issues pertaining to traffic and rat running, I guess, and net community benefit. And I hope other people speak to some of the other significant concerns. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Verstakian, just to let people know there's a maximum of 5 minutes. Go ahead, Councillor Verstakian.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This application, as we've heard and seen in the report, goes back to 2017. There was a public meeting convened actually by Ward councils at that time when it was lodged, and the applicant with his then architect team did attend and respond to questions at a widespread public meeting held at that much loved North Fitzroy Library building. To the applicant's credit, he took on many aspects that were raised and changed architects and a new project team. But at the end of the day, it's still a 7-level building, which was judged to be excessive by the council's planners and the urban design expertise by one of Melbourne's leading urban planning, both architects and urban planners, Rob McGorran. And I think in terms of the grounds of refusal, the scale, height and architectural quality of the proposed development, it doesn't respond to the site context and the requirements of the heritage plan overlay, which are referred to. I note that it was said that the report for council as written doesn't slavishly follow all aspects of an expert report. But the absolutely key elements of that expert report deals with the scale, height, and how it fits in with a prized neighbourhood centre. The centre is not a strategic development site. It's not a major activity centre. It's a small neighbourhood village, and most of the submissions identify that. The height and scale needs to correspond with that and the prevailing character. 2 stories, which can translate to 3 levels, given the ceiling heights. So I think that's all I want to add, given my speaking time, and I wish to commend Councillor O'Brien for the work she's undertaken, and of course it's been a very difficult application, and I hope our councillor colleagues note that the 2 ward councillors who moved and seconded it are supporting the refusal. I had actually drafted a approval based on the McGorran conditions, but having really thought about it and agonised over it, I believe that the extent of changes that would be required in terms of levels, the redesign of the building in 2 portions, and the impact on the basement with reduced number of apartments and requiring design is such that really the conditions that could be attached mean that it really is a refusal. So hence my seconding and supporting the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Verstakian. Would any councillors like to speak against the motion? I can't actually... Oh, Councillor Cheney May, go ahead. We don't have your audio, Councillor Cheney May.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I am speaking against the motion because I'm supportive of the officer recommendation, and I do acknowledge that there's significant concern from the community, as many of us have seen all of us have seen all the submissions coming through. But I guess I'm speaking from a person. Judging it firstly on the application, I believe there is strategic justification for densification, 1 in the inner city and 2 in activity zones, and I think this is the perfect site for it, and for our community as well. I think the application is a great design outcome from its original, especially from its original application. It has made immense improvements and actually has a really good mix of housing stock, which is so important to us, having passed our housing policy recently. It's got a great mix of townhouses, 3-bedroom apartments and 2-bedroom apartments, and has really minimised its 1-bedroom apartments, which is what we want in a design of an application, a development for the City of Yarra. So I think, also speaking from someone who can't afford to buy, I'm renting, and obviously housing availability is a concern of mine. I think there is really no justification. I think the application meets the strategic plan and the Yarra planning scheme. So I'm in support of the officer recommendation, and I won't be supporting this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Chenley-May. And any other speakers for this motion? Councillor Jolly, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you well, Councillor Jolly. Please go ahead.
I think no matter what anyone says, if it's passed tonight, this application unamended or unrefused will definitely be a precedent for North Fitzroy. Blind Freddie can see that the next cab off the rank will be the mechanics and the restaurants to the south of the Piedmontese site on the same side of the street, and also obviously the buildings opposite, and it will be in a 5 or 6 years' time a mini South Bank, a mini Queen's Parade. The issue of more housing leading to more affordability is actually scientifically incorrect. There's houses and units being built all over the city as we speak and over the last few years, and we've never had more people couch surfing rental stress, homeless. There's not a single unit of public housing or social housing or low-cost housing in this application. There's no inclusionary zoning whatsoever. So side by side with all the issues that were raised by Councillor Bryan and Councillor Fistaki, and indeed Councillor Stone and Councillor Searle in their interventions, I think that the lack of social housing, the fact that it's going to cause obviously a precedent for every landowner on that street who are looking at this vote tonight, and they will be ringing up their advisors tomorrow morning if this gets through. So on that basis, I think really we need to knock it on the head, go to VCAT and have a high-level strategic discussion, which is best had at VCAT in the public arena and also with our state colleagues. So on that basis, I'd like to support Councillor Fistaki and Councillor O'Brien's motion.
Thanks, Councillor Jolly. Any other speakers against this motion? I can't see Councillor Nguyen on the screen, so I'm seeking your advice, Mr. Thomas, from Governance. I don't currently have Councillor Dan Nguyen in the meeting.
He is with us, and we can see him on the live stream.
Okay, so Councillor Nguyen, would you like to speak against this motion? I'm just asking you specifically because I can't see you.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor, for ensuring I can participate. I won't be speaking against or for this motion.
Oh, you're there. Hi. Great. Fantastic. I'm saying great in terms of being able to see everybody for the first time tonight. So thanks so much for that. Okay, so we don't have any other speakers. We've had a speaker for, and we don't have any other speakers against. So with that, I'm going to put the motion.
It's a right of reply, Mayor.
Well, we had the last speaker was for, so right of reply, Councillor O'Brien, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just really quickly, I would just like to suggest that one of the concerns that I haven't outlined was the matter of the fact that we haven't yet endorsed our affordable housing strategy, which would ensure a segment of this development was affordable housing, and also we haven't yet endorsed our open space strategy, hence this large development will not make an important contribution to that. And also I have grave concerns about heritage matters around facadism and the fact that at least one significant, individually significant heritage building will be in part demolished. So that is, so I please encourage you to support this refusal.
Thanks so much, Councillor O'Brien. With that, I'm going to put the vote. All those in favour of the alternate motion, please raise your hands. Councillor Coleman, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Bosler, Councillor Fristacchi, Councillor Searle, Councillor Stone, and Councillor Jolly. I'm just struggling to see that bottom of the screen. Councillor Nguyen, could you please just articulate your vote because I can't see you very well?
No problems. I intend to vote against the motion.
Thank you very much. So I've just read out the councillors who are voting for. Councillors voting against, please raise your hands. So that's Councillor Chenny May and Councillor Nguyen voting against. And do we have any abstentions? I don't believe so. So I believe we have 6 councillors in favour and 2 councillors against, and that means that motion is carried. Thank you very much, councillors. Oh, sorry. 7 for, 2 against. I'm sorry, because I can only see 8, so I'm being a bit discombobulated here. So thank you very much, councillors. We're now going to move on to the first urgent business. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. I should just ask Ms. Osman to clarify for the parties the way forward from here in terms of the statutory process. Ms. Osman, are you still with us?
Still here through you, Chair. Councillors, following tonight's
just a point of order. Sorry, point of order.
Sorry, Councillor Jolly.
Sorry, Ms. Osman. Just a point of order to the Mayor. I'm at work. I'm going to have to leave the meeting at this stage.
Thank you so much, Councillor Jolly, for dialing in. Thank you. Lovely to have you. Thank you. I'm so sorry, Ms. Osman. Please proceed.
Not a problem. Thank you, Chair. Following tonight's meeting, a notice of refusal will be issued, and that will be circulated to the permit applicant and to all objector parties. That includes a number of whom lodged late statements. That should all occur over the next few days. The permit applicant will have 60 days to lodge an appeal with the tribunal to challenge council's decision. But should anybody have any questions, please contact the planning department. We're more than happy to walk you through the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Osman, for joining us tonight. Okay, I'm going to proceed on to item 4.1. It's an urgent business motion with regards to the closure of the Centrelink Abbotsford Service Centre, which was lodged by Councillor Stone. So we might try and get that wording up on the screen so that people viewing online and councillors can see that. Ms. Niku, this motion also has carried unanimously at the bottom of it, which is an error. It has not been put, and I'd ask that you delete those words, please, before we proceed. Thank you very much. Councillor Stone, we have the motion up there in front of us, and I would like to seek a seconder because I think we can all read it. Is there a seconder for this motion? I'm not seeing a seconder. Councillor Searle. Councillor Stone, would you like to speak to this motion?
Thank you. It's been amended a little over the course of the day because this is an evolving situation. I think everybody knows that the Minister for Services, Stuart Robert, announced 2 days ago that the Centrelink office in Abbotsford would be closing today. The reason given was that they could not secure an extension of their lease by the land owner, the property owner, and clients of the centre were going to have to go to South Melbourne. Over the course of today, first of all, the landlord has announced that they were as surprised as the public about this announcement and that they had tabled an offer to extend the lease. That was subsequently followed by media announcements that an extension of the lease has been granted and accepted. So who knows what's actually going on here? The bottom line is that the federal government was prepared to walk away from citizens in Yarra who need to use the Centrelink and Medicare office in their local area and direct them to either move online or travel to another municipality to use an office to actually see a person face to face and get help resolving some of the many issues that people have with Centrelink and Medicare. Over the course of 2 days, the outrage that this decision generated has seemingly resulted in a change of heart by either or both parties, so that there is now an extension of time on that lease for 3 months. That's great news, and it's a credit to everybody who expressed alarm and concern about this. However, we know that there is a pattern of Centrelink offices being closed across the nation. People are being directed online, and the community in our municipality, certainly elsewhere as well, need the opportunity to go somewhere and talk to a person face to face. Going online and travelling to the other side of the city are not suitable options. This was a cruel, thoughtless and heartless decision with next to no notice. Thankfully, there's a reprieve, but the long-term future of a Centrelink and Medicare office in Yarra needs to be guaranteed. So my motion is in 3 parts. One is that we take up the advocacy that's already begun by the sector today, and I know that people are already writing, urging the Minister for Services to ensure the ongoing provision of a Centrelink service in Yarra, somewhere in Yarra. Secondly, to get some clarity from Services Australia about what they actually need in terms of long-term accommodation in Yarra. And thirdly, to liaise with officers at Services Australia about our ability to support them to find accommodation if they need it. There's a very big question mark about whether it's actually needed and whether in fact this was being used as an excuse to get rid of a Centrelink office in Yarra. I note that there have been suggestions from the community, and in fact there's another motion coming up after this suggesting a particular property, a Yarra-owned property. I actually did do some homework around this yesterday and identified the fact that that property has been on the market for rent for some time. There is currently active interest in it. I deliberately did not include it in a motion because there are significant risks around that, and any discussions or decisions around the use of that Yarra-owned property need to be undertaken discreetly and certainly not in a blast of publicity as this would be tonight. So it's great that councillors have jumped in with amendments and other motions, and we're obviously all on the same page. But I have deliberately suggested that we keep it open about what might be offered or how Services Australia might be assisted to find the most suitable outcome. The ideal, of course, is that we secure a long-term site for Centrelink and Medicare in Yarra for our 10% of public housing, our older population, our non-English speaking population, our non-technology using population, and all those people who make a day out of going to Centrelink, Medicare, shopping, prescriptions, visiting and so on. Computers just aren't going to cut it with many people who need this Centrelink facility. So I really do hope that councillors will support this and look forward to this motion being carried.
Councillor Searle, would you like to speak to the motion too?
Thank you, Mayor. It's quite incredible to see a competing Twitter war between Centrelink and the Minister and the landlord, each claiming that it's the other's fault that there was an announcement with less than 36 hours to go that folks would be out of a job or having to move jobs, and that folks that need the services provided would have to go to South Melbourne. Whether it's incompetence or malice, we don't know. I wouldn't put anything past this federal government, but it's great to see that the outrage that we've seen all around the country in the last couple of days has prompted this back down. How it came about, we don't know, but it's good that there's a reprieve. I agree with everything Councillor Stone has said, and she said it very well, and I don't need to say much more, only that I think it is important that we pass this motion tonight to keep our options open and to provide whatever support we can in terms of finding another location in Yarra, and leave it absolutely no doubt that there's no reason why this service can't stay in Yarra. There are plenty of properties, including the one that Councillor Stone has alluded to and that we have a competing motion about tonight. But let's find somewhere for them to stay. Let's make sure they stay in Yarra. And I encourage councillors to support this motion.
I'm just going to seek a point of clarification. Councillor Nguyen, because you have a separate urgent business motion on the same issue, and I've just seen you send through a proposed amendment. Is that a proposed edit to your business motion or to the one currently before us?
Not so, to the subsequent urgent business motion that I intend to move.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Councillors, any questions to the mover and seconder? Councillor Bosler?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a technical question. It might be to Mr. Gilbert or Mr. Thomas. I don't see, although some councillors speaking to this motion have suggested that there's two opposing motions, there's nothing stopping a councillor from voting for both motions. They can both be heard subsequently, and we can vote for both in support of both of them. There's not, as far as I can tell, there's not conflicting elements in the two motions, and I just wanted to confirm there's no restrictions on that.
Okay, well maybe we'll deal, and I'm conscious too that the public haven't seen these motions, so anybody watching online might be a little bit bamboozled by the whole thing. So thanks for that clarification though, Councillor Bosler.
It was more a question, so I just seek confirmation from Mr. Gilbert from the governance that I'm not misinterpreting. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. In answer to Councillor Bosler's question, no, I don't believe there is a conflict.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Fristacchi?
Yeah, just a question, and this isn't in my ward, but I'm aware that the east-west public transport for people through Yarra is less than what should be expected. In fact, I'm just wondering how many people in the Abbotsford area would not have motor vehicles, and wondering how they would even get across to a North Melbourne office, particularly given the problems of COVID-19 transport and so on. So I just wondered if the ward councillors know if how they'd even get there, and put that aside, whether that can be included in the representations if it seemed to be an issue.
Councillor,
I don't mean in terms of amending the resolution, but I mean things that can be taken up with the federal government, because they probably don't know the area in as much details as we do at Yarra.
Councillor Stone?
Well, they'd get there with difficulty. A lot of the people I've spoken to in the last 2 days, that's correct, don't have cars. They combine their journey to Centrelink with other local tasks at the same time. It would be incredibly inconvenient and disruptive and confusing and worrying and all of that. That's what I've heard today.
Thanks, Councillor Stone. Would anybody like to speak against this motion? I don't see anybody raising their hand on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and there's 8 councillors. So if there's nobody wanting to speak against, I'll put the motion if people could raise their hands. So myself, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Bosler, Councillor Fristacchi, Councillor Cheney-May, Councillor Searle, Councillor Nguyen, Councillor Stone. So I don't think there's anybody left to vote against, and there's no abstention. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Stone, for moving that motion tonight. So we'll now move on to the final item of business tonight, which is another urgent business motion related to the same issue which has been put forward by Councillor Daniel Nguyen. If we could just have that up on screen, please, Ms Niku. Ms Niku, we again have the issue where we have the outcome of the vote displayed on the screen, which is highly irregular, and I'd please ask you to remove that before we proceed.
Sorry, I'll just explain, Madam Mayor, that it's part of the template and it is it's not supposed to presuppose the outcome. So I apologise for that, and we'll
Thank
make
you,
sure that doesn't
Mr.
happen.
Thomas. Can you please remove that from the template going forward, because it's actually quite embarrassing.
We will do that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I would just like to assure members of the public watching tonight that there is absolutely no predetermined outcome for any of the items which we've dealt with tonight. It's simply a template issue which will be rectified going forward, I promise you. Okay, so Councillor Nguyen, we just get that, I think we're getting some of those edits that you'd requested in light of the new information today. Hopefully Ms Niku is getting that in. And while we're getting that in, Councillor Chenley, am I correct in understanding that you're seconding this motion?
Yes, more than happy to.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nguyen, are the edits that you've requested, are they accurate? Are they all included now in the motion that's up on our screen? Councillor Nguyen?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Nguyen?
Sure, thank you very much.
Mayor, I've got a question first, please, before anyone speaks to this.
So do I, Mayor.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Councillor Stone?
To the CEO, I do understand, as I said when I was speaking earlier, that there is other interest in leasing this particular property, and I'm concerned about what the consequences of sidelining that other interest with, commercial interest and offering this very publicly to someone else, what the consequences of that would be. Could you please answer that?
CEO?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. As we discuss this topic, behind the scenes there are 2-3 interested parties, and they are discussing with our property manager, and these negotiations are going on as we speak, and they have not come to a stage where it has come either to me or to naturally also to the councillors, but we know there's an active negotiation behind the scenes with 2 or more parties. So I just wanted to give that as a fact, and it's a commercially driven negotiation.
Thank you.
So I hope that gives you the picture that subject to what arises out of that negotiation, we may have to come to you with some kind of a way forward, but it is happening actively as we speak.
Councillor Fristacchi?
Sorry, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, Councillor Stone, go ahead.
What are the consequences of going beyond those discussions and offering this to somebody else? What would that do legally?
Ms. Vaidina?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The fact is that till the councillors delegate it to me to sign the document, until the commercial documents are signed, legally we are not kind of held responsible for, if you call it reneging. But the fact is that the commercial sensitive negotiations that are taking place may be deemed to be taken to be beyond just discussions, and at this stage I have not sought legal opinion, as that would lead to a legal challenge. We have not yet signed the papers, so that much I know. We have not yet, it's not come to the council or to the CEO for signing, but then there are some negotiations which are slightly more than just exchange of ideas or discussions, because it's in a negotiated state. Negotiation stage. So that's where we are. It is delicate, but we'll have to work through it. And also, may I add that in case the proposal for putting this out publicly is not taken up by the by Australian services, then whether the other parties who are in a commercial negotiation, whether they will back off or not, I cannot promise.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Fostaki?
Councillor Stone has asked part of my questions, but there is a follow-up specifically asking the CEO for advice as to whether it would be preferable to amend the motion to make it more open about a council premises rather than specifically naming the premises. So specifically getting the CEO's advice on that.
Do you want advice, or would you like to ask the proponent whether?
I would like to hear the advice and then ask the proponent, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, any commercial or otherwise settlement with any agency, one would like to have some degree of confidentiality till it is signed off. So having such an option available in Yarra generically is okay. Because naming a particular venue or a place would compromise certain negotiations, but that is really a question for the proponent whether it can be changed. And it's not as if this has been in discussion with me for months. I have just come across what happened yesterday, and I have been asked this question. And it won't, I think naming a venue, if you ask my frank and fearless advice, is not wise. But just because the venue has been named, that is up to the proponent to change or carry on with it. I think I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I can't give concrete responses to a situation where I haven't even sought any legal advice, except the fact that I have shared with you that right now we have commercial negotiations happening as we speak with 2 or 3 interested parties.
Thanks, CEO.
So, Mayor, I would like to formally ask the proponent, Councillor Nguyen, if he would delete reference to that clause.
So I think
that property.
So, Councillor Nguyen, I guess the question is whether you'd be prepared to delete the precise address and instead propose the lease of a council premise without being specific about the specific site and the specific address.
Yeah, perhaps if there aren't any other questions, I could perhaps just start by speaking to the motion, which might then cover some of these points. I think to do it a roundabout way, at this point, I'm not intending to amend my motion. The motion that's been put forward and is in front of our screen tonight is what I intend to move. I think it's speaking to
well,
it.
In that case, Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment.
Okay, well, would you like to propose the amendment and see if the mover and the seconder would like to accept it? Go ahead, Councillor Fostaki.
I just, in the second line in A, refer to lease of council premises for the establishment of a Centrelink Centre. So you delete the word "the" before council, and then refer to lease of council premises. I leave out the apostrophe S in councils, but so it'll be the lease of council premises, and delete for the
So
delete all the words up to for the establishment. So delete the word, all the words after premises
while Ms.
until the word.
Yeah. So Councillor Fostaki, before we get Ms. Niku to type that all in, I think Councillor Nguyen understands the proposition. Councillor Nguyen, do you accept that proposed amendment?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right. So there's no point, Ms. Niku, typing that in. Councillor Stone.
Well, it's a formal amendment.
Oh, all right. So would you like to move it as a formal amendment?
Yes, I'm moving that happen.
Okay, so the formal amendment would be the deletion of the words following council up until the end of Richmond, with a bit of grammatical change. Is there a seconder for that amendment? I'm happy to second that amendment. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Fristacchi?
Yeah, I just need to leave out the and the word.
Yeah, we'll sort out the grammar.
Okay.
We'll sort out the grammar.
And the word.
We'll sort
and
out
leave out being. Okay.
Yeah, we'll sort out the grammar, Councillor Fristacchi.
Yes, I've heard what the CEO said.
Councillor Bosler is. Are you moving a point of order, Councillor Bosler?
No, I had a question for Councillor Fristacchi, which may complicate the matter. So I'm very nervous about asking it, but I think it's worth putting on the record. But if Councillor Fristacchi would consider it, I think the challenge that some of us have is that keeping it vague to just being a Yarra in Yarra doesn't recognise the fact that the residents that need it most are in the area of Abbotsford and Richmond, and so it needs to be. We would want to offer that it's in the vicinity. So if Councillor Fristacchi was willing to suggest in her amendment that it's in the vicinity, then that would be something that I think I would be willing to support as well.
Yeah, but council premises in the vicinity of in the vicinity of Yarra and Richmond and Abbotsford is quite broad because from a Commonwealth government
just say in the vicinity of the current location?
in Richmond or Abbotsford. In Abbotsford.
Councillor Fristacchi, may I propose that we say in the vicinity of the current location so that it's not going too far away?
And there's a lot of vacancies, so I can't see there would be a problem too.
Right. So
not just council premises, but
ensure that Ms. Niku has the correct wording of the amendment that's being moved by yourself and seconded by myself of vicinity of the current location of the Centrelink Service Centre. Yes, CEO.
Madam Mayor, even being should be removed, so it will read as of a lease.
Yeah, so sorry, beg your pardon.
So
please
it should be
so it's easy.
Of a lease of the council's premises for the establishment of a Centrelink service centre in the vicinity of the current centre. Current. Yeah.
So maybe. Mr. Thomas, if you could assist Ms. Niku with writing that up correctly and so that the grammar is correct as well. There's a few additional words there. And Councillor Fristacchi, if you'd like to speak to the motion while that's happening. Councillor Fristacchi.
Well, I think we've heard that. Mayor, I think we've heard the reasons for why this is a wise decision. It may well be if the CEO gets legal advice. This will compromise. This could compromise negotiations and cause us problems. It makes sense, and it may well be there's other premises we might have as well. Might be space in the town hall or something, but or some other premises. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I think it's a sensible amendment. It doesn't preclude the CO informally raising that building or the ground floor of 345 Bridge Road, but it's not, as long as it's not there in the public domain.
I think we just need to sort out the language in this amendment before it's formally put. But Councillor Stone, do you have a question or comment on this proposed amendment? Councillor Stone?
I did some time ago, but I'll just speak to it when the time comes.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Niku?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just my advice, again, being frank and fearless, the 2B, number 4, be conditional that negotiation of this presented offer of negotiation commence within 14 days would make it quite difficult for me to look at different venues. If it was the existing 345 Bridge Road that is vacant. So while that is also an option, I can't go producing vacant areas and to offer negotiation to commence within 14 days. So that's a little bit of a tricky thing for me. But if it's focused on 345, that is applicable. But if it's focused on any other premise that Yarra owns, I'll have to really do an exercise of finding out the floor space, and what do we negotiate with the real estate, etc.
Thanks, Gwen. Councillor Nguyen, would you be prepared to delete that clause 4, which is sounding like it's going to be incredibly problematic to effect?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, so I will move after this one a formal amendment to delete that clause.
Well, I'm happy to add that one to
your
my
formal
amendment.
Okay, let's get the First Amendment sorted out properly, because the wording is still problematic. So, Ms. Niku, I'll just read it. So, present an offer of negotiation to the Minister for Government Service, Stuart Robert MP, of the lease of premises owned, of a lease of premises owned by the City of Yarra, Great. I think is that your intention, Councillor Fustaki? Councillor Stone, do you have a question on this proposed amendment?
Yeah, I actually want to make a comment, if I may, because I think this is going down a really bizarre track. There are only 2 premises, council-owned premises, that could accommodate Centrelink. So it's kind of fanciful to suggest that there's a whole range to choose from. One is Bridge Road and the other is probably Fitzroy Town Hall. So if we're going to go down this track, we may as well just specify one or the other rather than suggest that we have a suite of premises that might be available for Centrelink.
I don't think we should. It's in my motion. I don't think we should say owned, because technically, if it is, we own one site, Fitzroy Town Hall. I'm not clear. I think we might have it as it's Crown land, leasehold or something.
I think I'm not going to second this amendment, because I think Councillor Stone's point is quite right, that while the intention of your amendment is very sound, Councillor Fustaki, I think the reality is there's only a couple of sites that would be possible, and I think this is being rather done on the rush, and I would ask the proponent and seconder to adjourn this motion until the next formal council meeting, because I think there's a lot of movement that has happened today, and I don't think it's worth. I think it would be a better motion done in 2 weeks' time as opposed to tonight. So I will withdraw the seconding of this amendment. Councillor Fustaki, what's your position?
Well, you've asked Councillor Nguyen to withdraw the motion, his motion.
I've asked him to adjourn it to the next meeting.
Adjourn it. So if
I'm just waiting to hear back from Councillor Nguyen.
I have no intent at this point to withdraw my motion.
All right. Well, I think this current motion is unamendable from my own personal point of view. So, Councillor Fustaki, how would you like to proceed?
Well, I'd like you to get, or all of us to get advice from governance, because a motion can only be debated as an urgent business with the Mayor's consent, is my recollection. So if you withdraw your consent to have been debated tonight, does that change the situation? I don't know, but that's a question for governance.
I'm actually not withdrawing my consent for it to be debated, but my personal view is I've tried to make a number of amendments. They don't seem to be well received, so I feel like it would be ill-advised to proceed with this motion without so much amendment that that is basically not possible to move. So.
So which motion though? There's
there's one in front of us, and Councillor Fustaki, are you still formally moving your amendment?
I have, and I guess I should be the one who should determine the wording of it as the mover of the motion.
Please go ahead.
And can I say it's got complicated because of crafting, but it's very. The only intention is to delete reference to Bridge Road, and it can stay as the only premise. But it was the whole idea was to delete reference to that on advice of the CEO. So all it needs to say a lease of City of Yarra premises for the establishment of a Centrelink. Sorry, I keep losing the wording because of other messages coming up. So for the lease of City of Yarra premises for the establishment of a Centrelink service centre in the vicinity of the current centre. Whether it's one or more, or it doesn't really matter. It's left open. So I think I'm happy. That's So if there's a seconder, that's up to the rest of council.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Bosler. Okay, so I'm going to put the motion to amend. All in favour? Please raise your hands.
Do we get a chance to speak to motions to amendments?
No. No.
Is there just no speakers against, or as in no right reply?
I'm back here, Councillor Coleman, by the way. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Jolly. Mr. Gilbert, I didn't think there was a debate over formal amendments, but I'm probably wrong about that. Should we be debating this amendment? Mr. Gilbert?
Sorry, Mayor. Normally, if you would have debate on an amendment, so you seek someone speaking against and then alternate. Yep.
Okay, so you'd like to speak for this amendment, Councillor Verstacke?
I think I have. It is. Yeah, so I think I have. So I'll leave it at that. It's only it's a general open-ended. It can, and I think it's safer to include that amendment.
Okay, so I think that we also need to have the wording of your amendment revised as you restated it before, because it's not currently right there at the moment. Councillor Bosler, did you want to speak as a seconder to this amendment?
Yep, I'm happy to. I think the two amendments that should be on screen is the reference to location, and also Councillor Verstacke, I thought that there was conditions about B4, which was on the advice of the CEO, about 14 days turnaround. So with those two, I think the intent of the motion is clear. I think we've put it to the CEO to seek her advice on concerns that she has, and I'm happy, once they are struck out, I'm happy to proceed with the motion here. And I think our intent is clear, and it would be absolutely, we should do everything. The crux of this is we should do absolutely everything we can to keep a Centrelink operational in this area of Yarra that so absolutely needs it. And I hope that this is never needed, and I hope that the tenancy matter at that current site is sorted out, although I'm sure, like the rest of us, we know that that's just the federal government mucking around, and they want out, and they're getting out of a number of their sites across Victoria and across Australia. But we should at least make every effort that we can to keep this service available in Yarra for the residents that need it. So I thank Councillor Verstacke for her efforts here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, could you please help Ms. Niku rewrite the two amendments that Councillor Verstacke is moving and that Councillor Bosler is seconding? And while that is happening, Councillor Stone, do you have an amendment to this formal amendment or an amendment to the substantive motion?
To the substantive.
Okay, so we'll get through this one first.
It would be good to see exactly what the wording's proposed, because it's gone back and forth so many times. I haven't quite followed it.
Couldn't agree with you more. Okay, so I think, Councillor Verstacke, it might be helpful because what's going on here is not really correct. Could you please, maybe we'll start off with 4 and
deletion of 4 in its entirety.
Deletion of 4, Ms. Niku, in its entirety. Deletion of clause 4.
With consequent renumbering of the 5 and 6 to 4 and 5.
All right, I suppose that's one way to do it. Would you like to read out the wording for that previous amendment, Councillor Verstappen?
Yeah. Present an offer of negotiation to the Minister for Government Services, Stuart Morris MP. I would say over a lease of City of Yarra premises, and then it's as written.
Except for.
So instead of a lease, it'd be over negotiation over.
What are you saying, CEO?
Seconder.
Well, it's pretty clumsy. Look, I'm happy to leave it as it is, but it's pretty clumsy.
Yes. Question, Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, can I ask the mover and seconder, in terms of broadening it to Yarra Council facilities, which are the ones that you have in mind? Because we don't have a huge list. So what are the ones that you intend to, just to give the CEO some direction, obviously?
Is this a question to me?
Yeah,
yes,
just which
I don't have. I just raise that as a hypothetical that there might be other leases. I'm not raising other premises. I'm not raising that. In fact, I did say that the CEO. It's fine for the CEO to raise Bridge Road but not for that not to be identified in a public document. That's all.
I think the idea was not to compromise any arrangements or commercial conversations that are happening at the moment. Councillor
Madam Mayor, may I offer some kind of assurance or reassurance to the councillors that with Councillor Fristaki's thing, it leaves it open. It may mean that I may have to pick up 345 Bridge Road as a negotiation for the Australian services to come. But then I have to take on board the commercial negotiations that are already happening. And why I wanted 4 to be removed is that 14-day turnaround is just not possible for me to talk to Australian services, talk to the current expressions of interest or whatever we have had from 2 parties or 3 parties. I'll have to bring all that together. But this also allows me to explore 345 as well. But if you don't name it physically, it'll help me to look at what are my legal options, what is the commercial conversation that's happening with interested parties, and also what can happen if I have to raise this topic with Australian services and could it be in the mix. So it makes it broader. And to answer the questions, we don't have too many properties of a flow space index that can take a center link and also look at other services that they offer. So we may be limited in that. And that time I may be able to come to council and tell them, this is where we have gone with the commercial negotiation. This is where we have had the informal discussions with Australia services. And now the options are A, B, and C. But I can't do it tonight because we are not going to put different venues right now, and that will be really inhibiting my way to look at it in a broader sense. I hope you get against
formal amendment.
Madam Mayor, Sorry, Madam Mayor, clause number 4 has still not been, because that is the difficulty I have, that negotiation should commence within 14 days.
It's been done in a rather curious manner by adding the word
deletion. Okay, I can't read that. Okay.
Yeah, me neither. Any speakers against this formal amendment?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Nguyen and Councillor Stone. You're speaking. Maybe I'll go to Councillor Stone first, Councillor Nguyen, because she's had her hand up for a while. I'm so sorry. Councillor Stone, you're speaking against the formal amendment?
I haven't had my hand up for a while.
You've had it up multiple times, so that's what I thought you meant. So would you like to speak against this formal amendment? Councillor Stone.
After Councillor Nguyen.
Councillor Nguyen, go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Madam Mayor. In terms of speaking against this motion, maybe perhaps I can attempt to address some of the concerns that have been put forward. And I'll limit it at this point to some of those concerns around the amendment. Instead of speaking more broadly with respect to my intent of the motion. I think the intent is pretty clear. But looking at specifically some of the amendments that have been put forward by Councillor Fristaki and Councillor Bosler in order to perhaps broaden what facilities may be on use, I think firstly there is some concerns around protecting of some commercial proprietary interests of those that are currently within negotiations with this site. And I think what needs to be clear for the public is that these are expressions of interest with no delegation from councillors, no delegation from the CEO to enter into any agreements. Now, again, from the very brief experiences I've had in this world with sort of commercial contracts and commercial negotiations in general, is that the larger number and the more viable field of entrance into any particular contractual nature is going to give us a benefit. So why would we, again, ignoring everything, if we can add another potential person into the mix to potentially look at leasing this site, that surely will only add to the viability and the benefit, and perhaps even give a larger outcome to what we're trying to achieve with respect to the lease. I think it's a bit ridiculous to say that we're in a position where we could potentially breach any commercial confidence, or perhaps even put at risk some of our commercial interests by limiting a field. I think by limiting the field, we do the exact part of the intent. So just from that perspective alone, I think it's a bit of a ridiculous statement to do so.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, CEO.
Madam Mayor, normally when we go for our tenancy kind of agreements, all parties remain unnamed. That's how we have the meetings, and that's how we do it. And we don't really name prospective tenancies, and we don't talk about who is involved in this. That's what I'm explaining as contractual law. Although we will be taking up the opportunity to discuss with the Centrelink people, and that is again done in a commercial way through their real estate people. It's never done directly. That's how it proceeds. So no one's name actually is touted when we do these negotiations. I'm just giving clarity and clarification. So you can't have one party where you're saying this is for this particular tenancy, and for the others we are unnaming. I mean, we don't have their identities out in the arena. So it's a bit of a non-level playing field, and that's what I'm emphasizing as far as, and Councillor Nguyen would know it, being in this field.
I think the thing,
to respond. Yes, I sort of think that this is like devolving into like a conversation that we would have ideally had not in the context of a formal council meeting. I'm going to ask for, would anybody like to speak for this amendment?
I probably haven't had a chance to finish my speaking against the motion.
Would you like to finish speaking against
your
motion?
Actually.
Councillor Nguyen? No, I think he meant by the CEO, if I'm not correct. Anyway, proceed, Councillor Nguyen.
So a few more points. I think, again, when we look at, I think there's nothing legally binding, which, any suggestion there's anything legally binding that precludes us from entering another person into negotiations. I think, if anything, the opposite would actually be a breach of our sort of fiduciary duties with respects to the community in terms of securing the best interests on this site. So I think that's probably the clearest indication. But putting that completely aside for a moment, we enter into the additional one that the current, from my understanding, the current perhaps those that have expressed interest of a commercial nature. So again, if we're willing to in this place preclude a service and a vital service for our community, so to ensure that a commercial interest is able to attain what is, again, a public asset, then fair enough. But again, I find that a little bit confusing as well, that we would somehow, again, be precluding a potentially a vital service being included in the mix. I think more broadly, though, and the specific one as to why I think I wanted to really emphasise a point in terms as part of this negotiation, and then ensure that there is some time sensitivity, and this is addressing the Second Amendment, is that I think not many people on this call are of the fantasy that the federal government sort of just stumbled across the fact that they had to be, or they were evicted this morning, and that sort of caused a chain reaction. Is that by actually putting in some conditions, putting in a viable alternative, putting in the time sensitivities in terms of conversations, we actually have some control and actually are able to understand where perhaps the federal government is entering into some of these conversations. Councillor Stone's motion, I think, is a good motion. I think this adds weight to it. And I think, again, it's not a conflict, it's not a substitute, but it ensures that some additional weight is added to it, in the sense that instead of perhaps just providing the federal opportunity with a chance to consider, a broad and sort of general approach and a broad sort of understanding of what might be available in the City of Yarra, we're putting a viable alternative, an alternative that is sweetened also by potentially an additional free year of rent. an alternative that has some time sensitivities where we can actually flesh out some of these interests. And I think that's really the key thing. If we broaden it again, I think it's too easy to ignore. It's too easy to put into the back burner. It's too easy to accept that, yes, we've looked at it, nothing else viable in the city of Yarra, so let's just leave it at that. Putting some time sensitivities with some conditions around it is going to put us in a better position to ensure that a vital service stays within our municipality.
Okay, would anybody like to speak for the formal amendment? I'll speak for the formal amendment and then maybe we can put it to a vote and move on. I have been dealing with a range of issues related to not just that site, but our budgetary position at the City of Yarra recently. And I think this Centrelink should stay where it is, and myself and others are doing everything we possibly can, not just on Twitter, to make sure that happens. I think if we've got a potential commercial tenant for one of the only sites that we have a commercial proposition for, that we should not compromise that, but we do everything in our respective power to keep the Centrelink where it is and not necessarily offer to subsidise the federal government to come in, even if it's for a short period of rent-free tenancy. But primarily, I think the effort should be on retaining the Centrelink where it is, and a lot has happened in the last 24 hours since we were given a notice vicariously, not directly, that there was an imminent closure. And so, Councillor Jolly, I think your building site speaker was going on in the background. So I'm supporting this amendment, and in so doing also very much supporting Councillor Nguyen's intent in moving it forward. But I do think we need to try and focus on keeping it where it is. If there are there any other speakers against the formal amendment? Okay, if not, sorry, Councillor Bosler? No? Councillor Fristaki, do you want to speak against? No.
Yeah, I still don't have an understanding of what the wording of this amendment is.
Okay, so it's at the bottom of the screen. If you can see the wording, the formal amendment, there's two parts to it. If you can see, Councillor Searle, can you see the wording of the amendment?
I didn't understand that those were, one of them's a new section and the other one's a deletion. Okay, no.
Yeah, I think I can't. Yeah, that's the way it's been done tonight. So can you see that all right, Councillor Searle? Councillor Searle, can you see what we're talking about?
Does it also remove the reference to a specific site?
Yes, it does.
Be in addition to.
So it's been written quite a tricky way, but the new amendment that's typed at the bottom of the screen would replace, if we can scroll back up to where that, I don't know why it wasn't done in text. I'm sorry about that. Can you see the deletion, Councillor Searle, in 1A of the specific address that's on the screen?
Okay, so that also forms part of the amendment. So it's effectively in three parts.
Yeah, it's a bit clunky, but you can see that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Mr. Thomas can assist with the way it's written up. So does anybody not understand what we're voting?
I might just be able to explain, and we don't need the words necessarily on the screen because that can be done. But essentially, we're replacing that clause 1A with this clause here, that present an offer of negotiation to the Minister for Government Services, Stuart Robert MP, of a lease of City of Yarra premises for the establishment of a Centrelink service in the vicinity of the current service centre. And then we're deleting what I think is 1B4, that clause that's written there. That's going to be the amendment.
Okay, so does anybody not understand what we're voting on? Councillor Jolly, are you with us? I'm not sure. I saw you and then I can't see you anymore.
He's not currently with us.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. All right. Okay. Formally put the amendment that's moved by Councillor Fristaki.
Right of reply.
Sorry, Councillor
Not for an amendment.
I understand there's no right of reply for a formal amendment. Is that correct,
Correct, Madam
Oh,
Mayor.
okay.
Yeah, so I'll formally put the motion. All in favour of the formal amendment, myself, Councillor Fristacchi, Councillor Bosler, Councillor Stone, Councillor Searle. Okay. Anybody voting against the formal amendment? Councillor Chenley-May, Councillor Nguyen, and then Councillor O'Brien, I haven't recorded your vote. Which is that? Is that abstention or I can't hear you, I'm sorry. And
Can I
Councillor,
abstain?
you can abstain. So that formal amendment is carried. So now it's back to the mover of the motion, Councillor Nguyen. I think we are up to you speaking to the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stone, do you still have an amendment to the motion? Councillor Stone?
It was to the substantive motion, which is no longer substantive.
So you don't now have an amendment that you would like to move?
It was an alternative to the way Councillor Fristacchi was going. It was probably a bit neater.
Probably to avoid any further conversations, I intend to withdraw my motion at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Nguyen has withdrawn the motion, and so that's no longer on the table. Does anybody else wish to move this motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to move the motion.
All right. So Councillor Chenley-May is moving the motion. Second the motion before we go any further. Councillor Fristacchi, you're seconding the motion. Thank you.
Unless a ward councillor wants to.
So Councillor Searle, would you? Sorry, Councillor Searle, do you? No, it's. So does anybody else want to second the motion? No, Councillor Fristacchi, you're seconding the motion.
Okay.
You're happy to? Thank you. Councillor Chenley-May, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Sorry, can we have the amended motion up, because so it's not confusing. So 4 needs to be deleted.
Mr. Thomas, would you mind assisting to get the correct wording of the motion that we currently got before us up on the screen? Thank you so much. While that's happening with the governance team, Councillor Chenley-May, would you like to speak to the amended motion?
Yes. Sorry, I'm just get it up on the screen as well. This is not the motion I was hoping to second or support tonight. I think the other motion was stronger for various reasons and put a really good offer to the federal government that they really couldn't refuse and hopefully couldn't refuse. I echo all the comments that Councillor Stone had made in a previous motion resolution. I think it's such a hit to the gut for the Yarra community and even just the community to close down Centrelink services during this time, and then requests that the community members travel to South Melbourne for their appointments. So to have this service right next to Richmond Town Hall, which is also already a civic centre, and a great hub for the city of Yarra, it would be such it would almost ameliorate some of the damage that the federal government has done by agreeing to this offer. I think the fact that there are already that there are mutual obligation appointments for many of the welfare recipients, and having to travel that far, as we said already, is just unacceptable. So I move the motion. It's not the motion I'd like to move, but I hope it's supported by the other councillors, and I commend the motion.
Councillor Fristacchi?
Yes, I agree with that second part wholeheartedly. At a time there where, in the present circumstances, there's limitations on travel, and employers generally are being paid by the federal government to continue their operations at this precarious time. I think it's extremely odd, and thirdly, when there is so many extra people needing the services of Centrelink. it really does not make sense. I totally agree with the thrust of the motion to put pressure on the federal government, and whether that leads to them leasing a City of Yarra premise at the end of the 3 months, where they're extending it seems that they will be extending the other premises, or it pushes them over to maintain the office is I think a moot point. This motion was not an attempt to protect any other commercial, as amended. It wasn't intended to protect any other commercial interest, but simply to be cautious about council identifying a specific premise given the CEO's advice to us, and I'm happy to take that. It's not designed to curb raising of Bridge Road, and that's up to the wisdom of the CEO in how she raises it. The same with the 14-day period. Indeed, there's a risk of including that, because if it's not negotiated in the 14 days, it would look like, if it's a condition of the resolution, that would lapse. And if it takes 15 days or longer, the motion would technically lapse. So it's actually designed to assist achieving those ends to keep the premises. And finally, I'm sure the CEO will endeavour, given the intent of this motion, to urge that the federal government do deal with the issue promptly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stacky. Would anybody like to speak against the motion? No? Sorry, Councillor Searle, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. When I first heard about this issue, my first reaction as well was to think, well, we've got a location on Bridge Road that we could offer. And in fact, I spoke about it to Councillor Stone. But I think that the motion that we passed, it must have been about an hour ago by now, is the best way to offer our assistance or our leverage towards keeping Centrelink in Yarra. I don't think, as Councillor Stone pointed out before, we actually only have 2 council properties which would be appropriate. One's 345 Bridge Road and one's Fitzroy Town Hall. So I don't really get what this motion adds to what we already passed earlier tonight. I think the politics of this have moved on since this issue first arose in the last couple of days. This might have been a good response to immediately jump in and offer something when there was a pending closure, but that's not the case anymore. So I don't think it's really necessary, and I sympathise with the thinking behind it, and I'm sorry that Councillor Nguyen's motion didn't end up the way that he'd hoped, but I just don't think this adds much to what we've already done tonight.
Thank you. Anybody like to speak for the motion? Okay, if not, right of reply, Councillor Cheney-May. Councillor Cheney-May, you're on mute, I believe.
Yes, thank you. I don't really have anything to add. I think there is still an offer, and I agree that Bridge Road, as I said before, I would have felt like the other motion was a stronger motion. Clearly, putting some time limits to kind of engage with the federal government, but this is not the motion I was hoping to move tonight. But I think it kind of puts into the federal government's view that we have a property that's available and that we're willing to talk.
Thank you, Councillor Cheney-May. So no further speakers for or against. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Myself, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Cheney-May, Councillor Bosler, Councillor Stacky. Can't see anybody else down the bottom of the screen. Against? Voting against, Councillor Searle. Abstentions? Councillor Stone. So that's carried. Thank you, councillors, for your perseverance with that. And Councillor Searle, I'm sorry it took so long. So I believe that's the conclusion of the business. CEO and governance officers, can you confirm that's the conclusion of the business for tonight?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much for the public who were online, to councillors and to councillor officers for making the virtual meeting possible. Thank you and good night.